Welcome back to the Pathfinders podcast. I'm your host, Pete Schramm, founder and CEO of Latitude. On this podcast, we're going to dive into the career journeys of awesome people with exciting paths. Our conversation is going to align with the Pathfinders book. We talk about career maps and a personal board of advisors. Reminder that the career map hits on 5 dimensions: the job and the title, the skills, the accomplishments and achievements along the way, education, certifications, and that fun stuff. Important to visualize it past, present, and future. And then we get into who do we share that with? Who's given us guidance and advice along the way? Our personal board of advisors. We might call it a PBA, but those are our multiple mentors. We'll share this on LinkedIn and the other podcast platforms. So please go ahead and leave a comment as you're going through so our guests know that you didn't fall asleep halfway through. The favorite quote from who's joining us today, no, it's not Derek Jeter, but the quote is from Derek Jeter. There may be people who have more talent than you, but there's no excuse for anyone to work harder than you do. Great words and good tidbits from Brittany Martin. Yep, that's who's our guest today. She's a strategic people leader with senior HR leadership experience in Fortune 100 and global Fortune 500 companies. Pretty impressive. The founder and chief people advisor, CPA, at BeKindWorks. She drives leadership development through kindness, collaboration, and strategic solutions. I love the way she used the rule of 3s. Brittany excels in transforming workplace culture, empowering leaders, and fostering inclusive environments. There's 3 again. SHRM SCP certified, actively engaged in the HR community across the country, not just New York City area where she's based out of, and serves on the Disrupt HR New York Metro Organizing Committee. Very, very active there. Her personal mission is fueled by being a role model to her niece and nephew and leading with authenticity and purpose. Before she comes up on the screen, I'm going to make her blush a little bit more and say that Brittany Martin walks the walk and talks the talk. We had the chance to meet actually at a really, really cool Starbucks in New York City with Sarah, and she's just fantastic. Been to some events together, fantastic collaborator and partner. And another fun fact that she studied abroad in Mannheim, Germany, or Mannheim, to open up a world of possibilities for her, unlocking the adventurous spirit and desire to travel. So welcome to the stage, Brittany Martin. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Pete. It was such a pleasure to meet you when you were here in New York, and I'm so excited to be here today.
Heck yeah. Have you been back to that Starbucks Reserve?
Not yet. No.
Well, growing up, what did you want to be as an adult?
When I was a kid, and we were asked that question, I answered that I wanted to be a librarian, which is not a typically common answer. And when I thought about it, it was because the library was always where things were innovative and creative, and you could discover and explore and find help. So I just always found it a place where you could lean into that adventure, and you found the librarians to be people that help to guide you on that journey.
And so did you go to school to be a librarian?
I did not. I actually did work in the library all through college, which was a very important experience for me. And I'll share that the librarians were part of my PBA while I was in college and still are today. But I studied in the business school.
Okay. And the question that we ask on this podcast is around what tools stayed in your toolbox upon graduation, right? There's plenty of instances where you say, oh, put stuff in your toolbox. Well, what actually stayed in there whenever you left those doors? Just remind our listeners where you were.
Sure. So I went to Fairfield University in Connecticut. I studied at the Dolan School of Business. And
Go Stags, right?
Yes, go Stags. I went into school business undecided, and I think that gave me a little bit of direction that I was getting a business degree, but it also gave me the freedom to explore. As I mentioned, I worked in the library, and I worked not at the circulation desk where I just checked books in and out for people, but I worked in the reference department. And learning how to learn, how to research, and how to curate those experiences to be helpful for students is something that really stayed with me, I think, beyond college. You also shared that I studied abroad in Mannheim, Germany. And while I was in school, I started to learn German, and not that I remember much of it to this day, but I do remember learning this appreciation for other cultures and other ways of living and working. And that experience was transformative for me. So, creating places and spaces for people to come and show up as their authentic selves in the workplace or in school environments, I think is another thing that stayed with me. And then the third thing that really resonates is I started a lot of organizations and clubs and found a lot of possibilities. I learned that in college, what you put in is what you got out.
Yeah.
And that's true to this day. So I think that being able to seek out things to test and explore and learn and grow are all things that really stayed with me throughout my time at Fairfield and beyond.
Brittany, you're full of these one-liners. I feel like we could break this up and just have a snippet, a snippet, a snippet, a snippet. Absolutely fantastic. So upon graduation, did you go to work full-time at the library on campus? Did you take your talents elsewhere and maybe migrate? So I guess from home, you kind of went a little bit east, right, to go to school.
Yes.
And then you can't really go too much more east and stay in the country.
Yeah, so I grew up in New York and went to Connecticut for school. While I was at Fairfield, I had an incredible opportunity to get an internship at Target. So I interned between my junior and senior year over the summer. And that was a really impactful experience for me. After graduation, I took a full time role with Target stores in Danbury, Connecticut, where I worked with amazing people, and I was the head HR person at the store there. And that's what began my first official role as an HR leader.
Okay, so I can see how you're able to guide people and be a resource for them, pulling on some of those bits you really developed and kept in your toolbox while you were in those college years. Ballpark, Brittany, how many people were you interacting with? How many people were you responsible for in your store at that time?
There were hundreds, I would say, on a regular basis, about 200 to 300 employees. And then during the holiday season, as we all know, brick and mortar retail would get very busy at that time. And so we would get close to 500 employees around that time of year.
And you're a senior, right? This is, really, really veteran employee, 22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
So how was that? How did you feel a little bit of imposter syndrome? Did you feel overwhelmed at all in that?
I actually don't think I did. I was nervous and anxious, but for me, even during my internship, I had incredible mentors. Whether it was the senior HR leader, who's also a Fairfield alumni, or the store manager, who both really encouraged me to take on the challenge and
Yeah.
believe in myself. And knowing that my purpose was to be helpful and to find solutions and break down barriers for our employees, they kept me grounded in the reason why I was in the job that I was in during my internship. And then that carried through, and I had an incredible store manager that I worked with in my first store. And he was a partner and an amazing advisor and mentor to me who helped to encourage me. So I felt the pressure, I would say, and the responsibility of taking my role very seriously and working very hard. I had a lot to learn, and I leaned into humility and respecting those incredible people that were around me. And at the same time, I worked hard to deliver on what my responsibilities were. So, yes, there were times that it was challenging and moments of being overwhelmed, but in general, I would say I relied on the people around me and the capabilities and the hard work ethic that I valued in myself.
I think that's one of the biggest things that people can do in any role. Right? They say, hey, how can I be successful? Well, figure out what you're supposed to do, make sure you clearly understand it, and knock it out of the park. And ask your manager, hey, what does really good look like? And if you're doing a performance review, I always get frustrated. Curious your take on this. Whenever it's a 1 through 5 rating and nobody ever gets a 5. So it's like, hey, boss, tell me, what the heck do I need to do to, get a 5? Do I have to cure world hunger or something? At least tell me what is it? So it's achievable. And you also mentioned the piece of humility. I don't know. I think it might have been at church where I heard this one time, that being humble is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. And I think that's an important piece for all of us, especially the kind of Gen Z, Gen Alpha, as we think about this sense of entitlement, and blending the right amount of confidence without jumping overboard into the bucket of too entitled. But a couple of good things to think about there. Brittany, at some point you left Target.
I did. Yeah.
Why did you leave? And help us understand, were you pulled somewhere? Did you think it was a good time for growth? Because that can be a pretty tricky move, our first jump in the professional world. I remember I said no, I think 5 or 6 times to leaving Lockheed Martin, even to some of those like remarkable management consulting groups, because I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I had that sense of belonging. I said, I'm here. No way. You want me to go? This is my family.
Yeah. So I've always had this sense of about like 2 to 3 years, I have this desire to grow. And so that's been that way, I think, ever since high school. And in college, that's that time frame where I went abroad and I added that new experience to my skill set. And while I was at Target, I had the opportunity to move around and work in different stores in the New York metro area. And so I had the opportunity to open up a new store and then advise on other stores. And I moved to the South Bronx after I was in Connecticut, and that was an incredibly different experience. And so I spent quite a few years, early career, building my foundation and learning how to be an HR functional leader while I was at Target stores. And that was incredibly important to me, to build my foundation, to establish my business acumen, to make an impact. And someone told me you should always be in a role at least 12 to 18 months to live with the consequences of your decisions and to learn and reflect and celebrate, right, when things work really well, or to learn from things that might not work out. And after about 5 years, I realized how much I loved being an HR business partner and empowering the business to achieve their results through people and leadership development. And at the time, Target was going through a lot of transitions, and there just weren't enough positions for me to move into the role that I was ready for in HR. And I saw 2 paths ahead of me where I stayed and I would just keep learning what I already knew or headed towards the store manager route, or I could leave. And I decided I didn't want to become a store manager. That wasn't where my passion lied or how I could contribute right at my best to empowering teams and living my purpose and vocation. And so I looked elsewhere. And so the short answer is it was for growth. And when I looked at my HR toolkit, I realized that I didn't have any labor relations experience. And that's a big aspect of being an HR business partner. So I wound up moving to Jacksonville, Florida, which was very different than New York City. I had 2 new incredible mentors in my life who took a chance on me as my supervisor and the general manager. And I was able to build that aspect of my toolkit while contributing my experience as an HR leader to the team. So that was
Where'd you go down there?
I joined Anheuser-Busch. So that's when I went to Anheuser-Busch and I worked in the Jacksonville brewery, which is one of the largest breweries producing beer for them in the country.
So what was that like? We're going to do a quick rabbit hole here. I can only imagine. In Pittsburgh, we have a couple of breweries, and there's tons of little ones. A couple of my friends have started them, but one of the biggest brewers in the world and one of their biggest locations and manufacturing facilities. Was it just so cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. And it was so different. I was surrounded by incredibly bright people, people that challenged the status quo and always looked for continuous improvement, people that had been there 30, 40 years, and then people that wanted to be part of something with legacy and heritage. And I had such respect, and I still do to this day, for those production workers that maintain the quality of a product that can be recognized globally. And the work and the effort that goes into the production and the speed at which it can move. I was always blown away by that. And then to have the partnership that we were able to foster between the team members and the leadership, that I was able to be integrally involved in, was really, really impactful for me.
Let's take a quick clarification moment here. You said labor relations. Some of the listeners may know what that is, may not know what that is. And it's a different kind of, work environment, most definitely. So real quick, tell us what that means and the kinds of individuals and organization you're working with, and maybe some of the things to be aware of in a union versus non-union.
Yeah, so labor relations is working with unions. And so it's making sure that you have positive relations between your union employees and your management team, and the organization who's representing the overall business. And I was incredibly intimidated when I first went to a company that had a union, and I was in a more junior HR role at the time. But my role was responsible for labor relations. And I realized that it's not two different sides, and it's not always competition. And we learned how to find common ground and realize that there needs to be mutual respect for everyone. And the job of the union is to advocate for your employees and to make sure that employees are looked out for. And the job for the business is to do the same thing. So good HR leaders collaborate, I believe, really well with good union leaders. And that's what I learned during my time there.
Working with, not against, I think it's a huge piece. So as you're, now you can't really go too much more south. So we've kind of checked the boxes for far east and far south in the United States. So you mentioned a couple of the people on your PBA, from the librarians to the Target store manager, supervisor, and GM. Were these individuals kind of helping push you and guide you of, hey, Brittany, it's been maybe 2 to 3 years. Where are you going next on your career map? Who helped guide you towards the next step?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it was always like an internal voice, and I was the one that really drove that. And everyone on my PBA helped to impart their perspective. They shared, this is what you could do. In my experience, this is what I've seen success with. And I really think that everyone that I've chosen to include on my PBA and people that I've valued as mentors of mine helped me to realize more about myself and less about pushing, oh, this is what you should be doing, or this is what's right or wrong. And all of these people did help open up doors. Yep. They were very candid and would challenge me of, if you want to be a leader, you need to learn how to do this or that. Or as my HR person, I need you to have more knowledge in this space, or these are the types of things you're responsible for. So they would open up opportunities for me, challenge me to think differently. And they all modeled that growth mindset that I think is super important, that I've lived with too.
So what was the next kind of gap on your career map where you said, I now need to go and get some of this experience? And one of the things we talk about on the career map are achievements and accomplishments. So what was next for you at that stage?
Yeah, so one of the members of my PBA, the general manager and the senior HR leader, they opened up an opportunity for me to go to a national conference where I presented a best practice about mentorship that we developed at the brewery. And it was amazing. It was so much fun. And it was the first time an HR best practice was recognized at a supply national conference. And it was voted on by all of the different brewery leadership, and to be recognized and to have all of these other facilities say, this is something we want to incorporate to invest in the development of our people and empowering our hourly team members to make this something sustainable for the future, was incredible. And after that experience, I realized that I was ready to blend my now more well-rounded out HR functional knowledge with a leadership role there. So I spent some time in Fairfield, California, which is Northern California, and helped out a brewery there that was in transition. And after about 6 months there, I moved to Columbus, Ohio, where I spent about 3 years as the senior HR leader. So that was incredible. I worked with national negotiations with the unions. And so that was another functional experience, right? An accomplishment I needed to check off. And all of that then prepared me to ultimately move back to New York with the company.
Nice. And at some point you said, I'm going to jump ship. I'm going to do this on my own. And when was that? And when did maybe the seed for that begin to grow? And how much longer? So for our entrepreneur group listening for this, it's always that, hey, when do I start this? And there's many folks that are in various stages of their career, like, oh, maybe I could be a consultant. Oh, maybe I could do this. And so many folks, Brittany, and you probably see this a lot, they say, what if, one day, maybe, perhaps me. And they never really take the jump, and they never really even get started as a part-time. So talk us through a little bit of that journey of, hey, maybe I could do this. Okay, I'm going to start on the side. All right, I'm all in, both feet out of corporate America.
Yeah, so this is something that I was surprised by. But that seed was actually planted when I left Target.
Whoa.
And I didn't even know it. But it was my PBA and my advisors, the people that I built these strong relationships over my life professionally, that helped point that out to me down the line. So after I moved back to New York with Anheuser-Busch, and I had this incredible opportunity to build the Beyond Beer business unit as the lead HR person, I got exposure to working with startups, and I got to work as an advisor for a lot of these HR leaders or business leaders that had their own teams and functions, and be a bridge between our C-suite and the founders, and protect what was special about the new startup cultures, and then leverage what we could do at scale from a big corporation. And I started to realize how much I loved this. It was a brand new role that I got to build from scratch. And when I left Target, I said, you know what? I'm going to go build up my experience, gain credibility, gain perspective, learn how things work in other places with different teams. And I'm going to come back and live in Manhattan and have this really cool apartment and this really cool job and be close to my family. And my sister had just had my niece at the time, and everything came together, and I was living my dream. And once you accomplish your roadmap, right? I knew where I was headed. I was there. It was a matter of defining where that next map was going to lead me and what my next destination was. And at that point, I reached out to mentors from my past. So I went back to Fairfield, and I spoke to professors and the librarian, and I spoke with other mentors that I had and people that I've worked with before. And they said, Brittany, you've always wanted to do your own thing. You've always wanted to go help others and be a consultant and share your experience. It sounds like it might be the right time. And I listened, and they were right. And they just helped mirror and reflect a lot of the things I'd been saying for the last 10 years. And so I took the leap, and about a year ago, I started BeKindWorks, and now I get to just focus on leadership development. And I work with all different size teams to help empower them and use all the experiences that I've had to have a bigger impact.
I think it's helpful for us to have those great mentors that know where we want to go. And sometimes we need that recalibration point that, hey, Brittany, you told me about this thing on your career map, this long-term goal. Is it time to go and achieve that yet? And we might say, son of a gun, there's so much dust on that puppy. I kind of forgot about it.
Yeah.
So helping us see that hope inside of ourselves and being that lighthouse
Yeah.
to guide us along the way. So talk to us a little bit more about what's next. Obviously, you're driving your own ship, sailing your own ship, and navigating your path. But let's talk about some of the skills you want to put into your toolbox. Maybe there's some education, certifications, and some of the accomplishments. Obviously, BeKindWorks is flourishing now. So listeners, please make sure to go check out her website, and she's very active on LinkedIn as well, to see how you might be able to connect the dots for her, and if she can help connect the dots for you inside your organization. But talk to us about some of the future steps. I know you got through chapter 5 in Pathfinders, so let's talk through a little bit more of where we're going future wise.
Yeah, so I want kindness to be something that we talk about as just part of how we do what we do as leaders. And I think that there are different ways that we can achieve results as businesses. I want people to be confident and comfortable knowing that they can be their authentic selves, that they can be kind to themselves and be kind to others, while achieving results. And so I see BeKindWorks as a conduit for that. A lot of the leadership development that I'm doing and working with emerging leaders or senior leaders, HR leaders, and helping them to discover what tools and resources are available to them, is also helping me to learn, because as you teach others, you learn more about yourself. You learn about things in different contexts. I've worked in different industries and teams of different sizes. So things I want to continue to learn is how other businesses operate and what
Yep.
their missions are and what their purpose is. And I want to continue to find incredible partners like you, Pete, because I think that there's a lot of us that are trying to enable and empower people to live out, right, their careers in a way that feels meaningful and fulfilling. And that has a positive impact on themselves, their team, their community, and it ripples. And so I think right now in the short term, some things is figuring out, right, like who are my other champions and allies and buddies that I want to do this with, finding other cross-functional experts and mentors that can help me to build my financial acumen or my commercial acumen as I'm being an entrepreneur and not just in my subject matter expertise lane. And so that I'm learning a lot and growing, but I want to get to a point where I have successors and I have people on my team that are going to continue to amplify this message. And I think it's important.
It's cool to see how you're kind of taking the PBA model for self and almost applying it to your business. And one of the infographics in the book is around, hey, we have boards of advisors and boards of directors for companies, and they guide the CEO, but they don't get involved in the day-to-day activities. Same thing with our PBA, right? They're going to guide just as your mentors and guides and advisors did for you, but they don't get involved in all the day-to-day activities. So cool to see how you're taking the personal side, but moving it back to business. Listeners, reach out to Brittany, comment if you think you'd like to be on her board, or if you think she could be on your board. And let's talk about that a little bit more, Brittany. You're super busy. You've done a lot of things all over the country. You got to spend time with the family. How do you and have you made time for mentorship and career planning, and whenever you're growing yourself? And how do you do this for others, paying it forward?
For me, I don't see it as a separate add-on. I see it as something that I'm kind of always doing.
Yeah.
It's knowing what I believe is my vocation is to help people to feel empowered and confident and enable them to use their special gifts and feel good about themselves, because then they go home and you want that energy you bring to your dining room table to be that positive energy. And so I always keep that in mind. My company being called BeKindWorks is a constant reminder for me of how to do what I do. And so I think it's having those subtle reminders that I'm surrounding myself by as a reminder of my purpose and the why of what I'm doing. And then I've been much more discerning of who I'm spending my time with. And it's not a matter of, oh, I don't like you or I don't have time for you, but it's valuing that people are in your life for a reason. And I always want to give and help and contribute to enhance their lives. And I believe that people want to do that in reciprocity. It's probably a better way to say it. So I think that that's super important to keep in mind. So I'm always looking for people that you just click with. And I've spent a lot of years in corporate trying to be that square peg in a round hole and forcing it to fit. And I've just stopped, and I've given myself permission to stop doing that. So I make time to reflect. I value the conversations. I follow up on relationships that I've started that I want to nurture. And I think that just showing up and being yourself is really the best way that I've been able to do that consistently.
And it takes time to do that. Let's not, beat around the bush with that one. It is not an easy thing. And there's going to be different phases of your professional career, professional development journey, where you have more time, less time to do these kinds of things. And just like you said, be real to yourself. And if you have to say, hey, not yet, it's better than a no. And as mentees requesting time from you, that's a-okay. We're going to get into the value you see for this methodology at the individual level and organizational level in just a moment. But your previous response was a bit of an alley-oop feeding us into that. And I have to say that with a basketball term because, I'm a big hoops fan. And just last night, when thinks everybody's going to realize whenever we did the recording of this, history was made in the NBA, right? A couple of different things. I don't know if you saw it, but it was the first time a father-son duo was on the court in a real game at the same time with LeBron James and Bronny. Who knows? Maybe we'll get them to listen to this podcast at some point. And I think that LeBron James also has now the most missed field goals of any NBA player, just passed up Kobe for that one. So cool little bit of current events as we're going through this. But Brittany, please talk. And if you want to give a shout out to Pathfinders, folks, I'm not paying Brittany any money for this, but she shared some really impactful and helpful words. Other authors listening at this stage, how special these things are. So maybe touch on a little bit of what Pathfinders has meant to you, the book, and then where you see the value to individuals and the value to organizations when it comes to the PBA and this career map, CM.
Yeah. So as I shared with you, Pete, and I'm happy to share this publicly, I have found the book to be very actionable and it feels very real. I think that there's a lot of books out there that just tell you what to do, and Pathfinders invites you to use this and apply the guide as it fits for you and where you're at. And there's places where you can pick it up and put it down and moments to reflect, and your personal learnings that you share help to model how this can be integrated into your life. And I think that some of the stories that I shared too, it's easy to incorporate and realize and reflect on who are those people that are your PBA, right? Like I didn't spend all this time prepping and preparing and rehearsing. It just naturally came because the framework is so easy to follow. So I do think that this guide could be great for an individual that's like, wow, I would love to be able to figure this out, but I just don't know how to do it. I need some guidance. Like it's captured here and it's a good starting point. And then I love that you reference like working with a coach, right? Or reaching out, and like, it's that conversational part, because this conversation today has helped bring it to life for me. And then for organizations, you can just do that at scale, because then you have a common language. And in leadership development, I think that that's huge. And something I try to do with my teams is give us this similar starting point where we all know where we're at and we all have common language to talk about things that are meaningful to us and are impacting our lives. So the Pathfinders career map and your PBA allows your team to know what we're all saying. It's like a shorthand that helps things to be much more efficient.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Brittany. I have a couple of notes, so I'm going to get ready to go through here as a quick recap. Is there a single takeaway or closing comment or piece of advice that you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap things up here?
Um, because the Yankees just got into the World Series, again, current events. I'll go back to my Derek Jeter quote of there may be people who have more talent than you, but there's no excuse for anyone to work harder than you do. I'd like to look at that from a kindness perspective
Yeah.
and say there may be people that have more talent than you or appear to be more successful than you, but there's no excuse to not work with kindness top of mind.
I'm with you. All right, Brittany, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to go through this recap real quick. So Brittany Martin joined us from the New York City metro area with the childhood dreams of helping people on their journey as a guide in a librarian role. She loved the librarians in college and want to give a shout out to the Stags. Business degree coupled with the library role taught her how to learn and better help others. Her budding multilingual appreciation for different languages and studying abroad in Germany helped her grow in many different ways. The role of threes in all of her responses was fantastic throughout today's session. Helped understand what you put in is what you get out of it. And then at the internship at Target, turned full time, you worked with hundreds of people, a lot around early career leaders, guiding them and getting the support, right? Your specific leaders helped support you and challenged you, right, to go beyond your comfort zone. That's where we find success. You were successful by working hard and staying humble throughout. You opened stores, advised stores, and moved around. You were a fantastic fractional HR leader. And you shared with us, hey, every 12 to 18 months, you can then think about moving to a role and into a new position or something. And you were actually saying, hey, maybe it's closer to 2 to 3 years. So folks, don't look to move too quickly. Strategically said sayonara to the career path of a store manager and went south from Connecticut down to Florida to fill that labor relations gap on your career map. Cheers to Anheuser-Busch. You learned about the emphasis on quality in the union environment and that success in the unions and labor relations is by working with, not against, finding that common ground. Your internal voice drove you while your PBA guided you. A couple of years later, went west and began to add more pieces to your career map, opening doors, opening your minds, thanks to those PBA members from the librarians, from Target, from the supervisor and GM at Anheuser-Busch. Rockstar kudos for winning on that national stage around mentorship programs from California to Ohio and ultimately back to where you are in the New York City area. Great mentors remind us what we really want to do, and maybe they're going to help us knock off the dust. That's why we share that career map. We look forward to you bringing kindness, more kindness at BeKindWorks to emerging leaders, senior leadership in this realm of leadership development. Please, everybody, go check out BeKindWorks. Her vocation is empowering people and guiding them. And thank you for the shout out to Pathfinders as this actionable guide to individuals and making it a reality and scalable inside of an organization. So to everybody here today, there's no excuse. Be kind and do this to others, and it'll help you as well. Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you, Pete.